Well, good morning, everybody. We are now starting our lessons on world religions, and today's lesson is a focus on why it's okay and it's important for us to study world religions. When I was studying this, a scripture came to mind, Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18, which reads, "Come now, and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool." And what's wonderful about this verse is God is not demanding somebody to listen to him. God's not forcing somebody. He goes, "Come, let us have a conversation." He goes, "I learn about you, you're going to learn about me, and we're going to come to an agreement." And that is really what learning about world religions is. It's not about proving who's right or wrong. It's about gaining understanding. When I was studying this, it made me remember when I was a kid many years ago. We were in a town called Del Maíz, which is in the middle of nowhere, Mexico. And nowhere, Mexico means nowhere. This town was small. I found out that they actually have live cams on the town now, so I can actually look at stuff that I used to see when I was a kid. But it's just a tiny town, and its main purpose at the time, despite being called Del Maíz, which means city of the corn, it really didn't have much to do with corn, maybe at one time. But what they do there is that there's a mountain called the Tampico Mountains, and truckers come out of there and they'll stop at the hotels, and they kind of help support the truckers and the traffic that's coming through. But as a child, I remember we would get up early in the morning and we would go and set up our little shop that we would have and to sell things. And then afterwards we would go and buy things from the town. So the money that we make money from the people, but then we give the money back to the people. So, the money stays within the neighborhood, and we get things that we want that we can sell here. And one morning, we got up early, and of course, we had done all of our selling for the day, had already done for the weekend, so we were just going to do some shopping around the town. And there was a small shop. It had a little, cement porch, and then it had, of course, all the roads there were dirt. At least in that area of the town, they weren't cemented. It was just dirt. Well, here comes this lady, and of course, she sweeps off her porch. She opens her business, and she's sweeping off her porch. Then she got out on the dirt and started sweeping the dirt. Now, for us Okies, we have the common sense to know if you sweep dirt on the ground, guess what's still going to be there? Dirt. No matter how much you sweep it, it's still going to be dirt. You can't get rid of it. It's dirt. It's a dirt ground. You just keep sweeping, there's more dirt. But Grandpa explained that in this area, even though most people are Catholic, they have local superstitions. And he was saying that they believe by sweeping the ground in front of their business, they're sweeping away evil spirits. And I thought, well, that's so interesting. And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy too. But it was interesting, as a kid. And then also, of course, they also will take, when they buy a new house, they will go to their local priest, and he will come and he'll have a vial of water. Ornate little, it looks like a little vial, and it's all pretty and everything. And he'll take that water and he will sprinkle it on the walls. And that's to ward off evil spirits. And now this may not be something completely Catholic, but it's something that they believe. And of course, all of Mexico, they celebrate what they call Day of the Dead. And if you've ever been to Mexico during Day of the Dead, these people get all this food together, and they will bring it out to the graves, because they believe during the Day of the Dead that the dead rise and they will eat the food. And so, I was a Christian, of course, as a young Christian, it felt like it was crazy, but Grandfather said, no, this is what these people believe. He says, just imagine if you grew up here, and this is what you were taught since you were a child, that's what you're going to believe. He said, it's important, of course, to learn about these people's customs, that's how you learn to witness, because you tailor that witness according to them. And this reminded me, of course, if anybody's ever dealt with a salesperson. A really good salesperson does one thing, and all of them do it. They get you to talk about yourself. Whether you're buying a car, And just this week, we had 2 salespeople from AT&T show up now that we have AT&T in this area. And they're so much cheaper than Cox. Like, listen, Cox, your prices are too high. But they're a lot cheaper, and I already knew about it because I've been waiting. I've been on the mailing list for years. And finally, their high-speed internet, which is really fast, is available now in my area. So here comes these 2 salespeople. And the guy starts talking to me. And I already know I know for each what each is getting. And so I explained it to him, but he continues to ask me questions about, what do you like to do? Are you a gamer? Do you like to play games? Do you like to watch movies? Do you stream? What is it that you're doing? Because when he gives me an offer, it's going to be tailored to what I need versus just blatantly say, do you want this? You know, that's a good salesman, is that they want you to talk about yourself so they can customize the offer. And of course, all right, since I already knew, I was able to make his job a lot easier. I said, well, this is what each person does. This is what they need. And he goes, this is what the recommendations that I have. And of course, saving us a lot of money. They're coming next Wednesday to start installing everything, which happy to make my bills cheap. Anything I can save money, I'm going to be happy about that. But it comes down to understanding the person. Matthew chapter 22, 37 through 39 says, Jesus said to him, thou shalt love thy neighbor, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Loving your neighbor doesn't mean agreeing with your neighbor. Loving your neighbor means that you earnestly care. And when you're witnessing to somebody, you have to show them that you care. You can't just tell them Jesus loves you and they're just going to accept it. They have to see that in your life. And like getting back into the lesson part here, as I said, understanding world religions isn't about saying, I'm right, you're wrong. It's about gaining understanding to help you be a better witness to someone who believes different than you. To find a set of basically a common ground, if you will. First of all, there is a biblical foundation for actually studying world religions. One, it's a call to love and understanding. We, of course, know the story of the Good Samaritan. You have this person who was not religious according to the Jews. In fact, the Samaritans were seen as an abomination because they both believed in Judaism. They also believed in the religion of the heathen. They kind of mixed them both together, and so the Jews didn't want anything to do with them. But what Jesus points out in the story of the parable is that even someone who doesn't believe the way you do and you think they're wrong still can do good and sometimes be better than you are. And he goes to talk about the religious leaders. Here's a man who gets beaten by thieves. He's almost dead. And they and the religious leaders who are supposed to be the ones pointing people to the Lord kind of walked on the other side, ignored him, pretend nothing, that he wasn't there, and probably thought that he probably deserved it, because some people thought that if something bad happens to you, it has to be because you deserve it. Then you have this Samaritan who's supposed to be the heretic, who's supposed to be the wicked person who takes the time and care. And of course Jesus then asked, who is more neighborly? Who is the better neighbor? Those that were religious but didn't care, or the person who wasn't religious but did? Who's the better neighbor? We as Christians are called to be a good neighbor to all people, not just those we agree with. Secondly, it is a missionary mandate. Everybody is called to give the gospel. Now, everybody does it different ways. Different people. God has somebody for you to witness to. I know Wanda was talking about a friend that she's been witnessing to, and of course I know there's a certain family member you all know about that, you really want, how am I going to win this person? How am I going to change their heart? Because that's the thing, the gospel is what does it, but how do you approach that person? Well, learning about why they believe the way they believe not only allows them to open up and talk to you, but allows you to understand them, and more importantly, find a way to talk to them about the Lord. Jesus commands us in Matthew chapter 28, 19 to 20, he says to make disciples of all nations. You don't have to be afraid. There's always a way to talk to somebody and be a witness. When Paul addressed the Athenians, and I found out how to say this Greek word, and I spelled it out how it's supposed to be said. It's Areopagus, in the town of Areopagus. So I'm like, I am never going to say that right if I don't look this up. I guarantee these. I take different lesson material, and they still have those crazy Greek words. But Areopagus, he demonstrated a deep knowledge of those people that lived there. He understood why they believed what they did, what the gods that they had that they worshipped, and it opened up an opportunity for him to talk about the unknown God. As it is read in Acts chapter 17, 22 through 23, it says, Then Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill and said, Ye men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are too superstitious. He says, what? He says, guys, I understand you're really superstitious. You want to make sure you're not offending any God. He says, For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription, To the unknown God. That they even had an altar for, they said, for the God we don't know if exists. We want to make sure you're being worshipped too. Whom ye ignorantly worship, him I declare unto you. Paul saw that we give this unknown God. He says, well, guess what? I know who it is, and I'm going to tell you about it. And of course, these people, because they're superstitious, he understood they'd be interested. And so it opened the door. Truth is, people are generally interested to know about you, just as you are about them. If you show interest, they will show interest back. When we think about being a witness, we look at the example of the early church. The earliest followers of Christ lived in a pluralistic world surrounded by Greek, Roman, Jewish, and other religious traditions. The New Testament is filled with encounters between Christians and followers of other faiths. The apostles engaged thoughtfully and respectfully with people of different beliefs, sometimes challenging and sometimes affirming elements of their traditions. When I was studying this, it made me think about my grandparents in Pakistan. When they went to Pakistan, they didn't go to make the Pakistanis film. They didn't go to make the Pakistanis Americans. When they went to Pakistan, they understood that as a Muslim country, they had traditions that are very different from ours. For example, with my grandfather, and he's left-handed like me, the left hand is seen as something bad and taboo. This is something you use, as my grandpa said, to wipe your behind. He said, anything dirty, you use the left hand. Everything else is done by the right hand. Well, my grandpa, being left-handed, had to learn to do everything he could with his right hand to not be offensive. Even though he didn't believe the same way they did, he had respect to the culture. My grandma had it much worse, though, because in Pakistan, being a country, of course, that believed that man is everything, she had to, when she walked out, she had her head always covered when she was out in public. She didn't wear the full burqa because she wasn't Muslim, but she would keep her head covered. When she was walking in public, she would walk 3 feet behind my grandfather. And when they were in the presence of men, she didn't speak unless she was asked to speak. And this is tough because living in the United States, you have all these freedoms. Women's suffrage got the right to vote, the right to speak, the right all that in the 1920s. And here she is going back in time, hundreds of years. And so it was a culture shock. But she also understood that if she did not abide by their culture, it would offend people. And if they witnessed, it wouldn't matter. Because their job is not there for her to be comfortable, but her to witness the gospel. And we got Henry now. Well, Henry, your time is numbered, Mr. Wasp. Henry's a wasp, by the way. We've already killed George, Edna, Marcus, Leon, but now we have. Does it land on some of the poison I've already sprayed? Do the job for me. But anyway, they had to do everything they could to respect the culture because it wasn't the United States. It was the Pakistani country. It was Pakistan. And so because of that, they were able to talk to people about the Lord they normally would never have been. They were invited into households. And had they been disrespectful to the culture, they wouldn't have gotten anywhere. And chances are they probably got killed themselves. But they had a deep respect, and the people respected them and showed interest. One other reason we study world religions is to overcome stereotypes and prejudices. Many misunderstandings and conflicts arise from ignorance. When we do not know about the beliefs and practices of others, we are more susceptible to stereotypes and misinformation. Studying world religions helps us to move beyond caricatures and see the complexities of humanity in every tradition. This practice reflects the humility encouraged in Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. In Philippians 2, verse 3, it says, "Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem the other better than themselves." In other words, instead of looking at somebody like, "You are a poor lost sinner. I can't believe these horrible people and what they believe is so terrible." It might be. I mean, if you went to you visit people that were, let's say, sacrificing their children to an altar, it's rightfully to say, "Man, this is awful." But the truth is, you also have to understand that these people have never heard the gospel. They don't know a different way. And it's looking at them as people that deserve to know Jesus, just like you deserve to know Jesus, that to give them that opportunity, and if you truly love them, you will desire to help them. This, of course, reminded me of the 5 missionaries that went to Ecuador to witness to the Haudani people. These people, at one point, were known as the most violent people on earth. In fact, they were so violent, the Ecuadorian government was going to send the military and wipe them out. And the missionaries went to the government and said, let us try first. Let us see if we can help. And so they went to Ecuador, and they met with the Haudani, and at first, for many weeks, everything seemed to be going well. The people were very receptive of them, and they were learning about the people, and they got someone who could help translate for the local language, and everything seemed going fine until one day, as the missionaries were preparing for another meeting, the Haudani men came and murdered every one of them, killed all 5 men. Now, the wives of these people, of course, are living in the big city in Ecuador, were like, what do we do? Do we leave these people? I mean, one of the ladies said that her initial reaction is that these people could just all burn, because her husband was murdered. But then the Lord pricked her heart, and to show that it was God's work in it, one of the Haudani women came to the city, found them, and said, "We need you to come back to the village." And she said, "Are you going to murder me too?" They said, "No. The people that did it have died, but we desperately need you." Because, they knew that they're going to get wiped out. They were terrified. So they went back, and they brought their children with them, and they witnessed these people. And they ended up getting, the majority of the tribe got saved. And you know what? They still exist today because of it. You see, if they had this attitude that these people are horrible, even though they do horrible things, understand it's because of ignorance. They've not heard the message. Once they hear the gospel, they have an opportunity like anybody else to reject or to accept it. But they deserve that opportunity, deserve to us to have an open heart, not to be so quick to judge. And another important thing about learning other religions, it helps strengthen our faith. See, the truth of the matter is, when you look and see what everybody else is dealing with and what they go through for their faith, it makes you appreciate what you have in the Lord, that God has given you, this freedom. They said the truth will make you free. And to have that freedom, the freedom these people don't have, it helps you feel sorry for them, but also strengthen that you have, that you have a faith that doesn't demand that you give all of your money. That doesn't demand that you give all your time. That doesn't demand that you walk up thousands of steps just to might have a prayer heard. That you have these blessings. And also the truth is, when studying other religions, there is a sense of wonder. Having gone to other countries, and like, for example, when I was in Thailand, I saw the reclining Buddha. This Buddha it's gold-plated. I thought it was pure gold, but it was gold-plated. But it was huge, massive, massive statue. And to see all the ornate artwork that these people have done in order to worship their gods, in order to show their devotion, and to think about these people are so devoted. Am I that devoted? What do I do for the Lord? These people are willing to give everything for a possibility of a blessing. When we give so little, and we got a guaranteed blessing just by serving the Lord. It shows that, that, hey, you know what? There is a sense of wonder. There is a sense of saying that I can learn from these people, because guess what? We can. I was watching a video, and there's this individual. He was born in the Middle East, but he was raised in Canada. He is agnostic, meaning he doesn't follow Islam or anything, but his family asked him to go back to where he was from and to look at the people. And he said, even though he doesn't believe in Islam, the one thing he admires greatly about Muslims is their sheer devotion, their ability, their desire to work and to do everything they can in their power to serve the Lord. He said, you know, where I grew up, there's a lot of Christians. He said, but I would notice that, you know, if the weather's really good, the church, the lot would be barely full. He says if the weather was bad, there wouldn't be anybody in the church parking lots. And that there was always excuses. He said, but here's the Muslims, rain, sleet, or snow, they show up to the mosques. That they're willing to do anything, put up with a massive amount of discomfort to serve. And he said that actually made me feel that I could do more. He says, even though, he says, I was raised in a Christian home, even though he's from a Muslim country, and he decided to be agnostic, he said it challenged me that I could be doing more in my life. And I said, so there's something to learn. It's not everything that is not always negative. We can absolutely learn. And so for the next several weeks, we are going to go on adventures. And each week we're going to discover a new religion and be able to, you know, understand what they believe, why they believe, and what we can do to help you relate and share the gospel with those. Thank you.